Blog Talk Radio.
Monster Truck fans, are you ready for the most updated Monster Truck program on the planet? Well, sit back, buckle up, and hang on. It's time for Monster Truck Radio. And here is your host.
Good evening, lug nuts, and welcome to Monster Truck Radio in 2012. I'm your host, Ross Bonar, with co-host Chris Parrish, and we are very excited to have you all here with us again this evening as we get ready to kick off an all-new year of Monster Truck Radio, and very exciting to announce some of our great sponsors here of Monster Truck Radio are going to be joining us, or of TheMonsterBlog.com, are going to be joining us for Monster Truck Radio here in 2012. E3 Spark Plugs and Amerigas. Very happy to have those guys on board with the radio show. We've got a very exciting guest lineup for first quarter, kicking off tonight with a huge guest, a huge name in the monster truck industry, as Scott Douglas will be joining us. Chris Parrish out there in Kentucky, you know, this is a great night because it's a great opportunity for us to get some real insight on the Monster Jam 2012 season from the man himself, the man who calls it all on television.
Absolutely. Scott Douglas is a wealth of information. Man knows things that most people can't even imagine, and if anybody's going to provide us the insight we look for on Monster Truck Radio for the Monster Jam schedule, it's going to be Scott Douglas.
No doubt about it. And it really tonight kicks off great schedule of guests that we're going to have here in first quarter. As with the Monster Truck Radio concept, it really gives us a great chance to talk to some of the personalities in monster trucks that you wouldn't really get a chance to hear from otherwise. And using our approach that we always take to try and cover the monster truck industry as a whole, we're going to be having lots of different theme nights, from talking about the Monster Nation Toughest Monster Truck Tour Series one evening, the Monster X Tour another evening, and Monster Nationals another evening, and then having guests from those series to help pump up those shows. And we're going to be doing lots of Monster Jam stuff throughout first quarter as we lead up to the big World Finals at the end of March. And like I said, that starts right here tonight. The voice of Monster Jam on Speed TV. I believe he's on the line now. Scott Douglas, how are we doing tonight? And Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you guys. Always a pleasure. I really enjoy getting to talk with you guys. And, of course, this is a real exciting time because we kick it off this week. You know, it's gotten now, it's kind of funny, it's gotten now to where we're so close to year-round with the Europe tour, and we've always had the Minneapolis date in December. But there's still something, you know, for us with the magnitude and the amount of shows and the whole build-up, because you really feel the road to the World Finals kicking into gear now. It's kind of like opening day for baseball fans for us heading into this weekend. So it's a pretty exciting time.
It just doesn't get any better than this weekend for monster truck fans, because, you know, fans all around the country that aren't able to make it out to a show, they're sitting there by the computer hitting the refresh button on the Monster Jam results page and on all the different places, just looking for any bit of news from those first shows that occur. Where are you kicking off the year this year, Scott?
You know, it's one of those things. I was really a change in the old schedule, as it was said. So I was originally planning on actually announcing in Houston, and our good friends with the Texans had themselves a pretty good football season. So
yes,
that date had to get moved, and so since I'm kind of the elder statesman around, I'm going to go to some different shows and just kind of hang out with some of the other announcers and just you know, see if I can help out a little bit here and there on this first weekend. Then I'm getting ready for our next speed show that we're going to tape in Atlanta the second week of January.
Well, you know,
I'm going to hang out in Tulsa, go to Manchester, New Hampshire, just go fly around and see some different shows. I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually going to do a little more watching than working, and something I rarely get a chance to do.
Well, yeah, that should be a lot of fun, and going to a couple of those different shows, you should get a chance to see some of the newcomers to Monster Jam that do some of the arena shows. Like I think you said, for example, Tulsa. That'll give you a chance to see, I think, what's going to be one of the real hot rookies of 2012 in Monster Jam, J.R. McNeil with the Raisin Cane truck, and then up in Manchester, I think Greg with the Crush Station truck, which has been a pretty big player coming onto the scene.
Yeah.
So that's got to be kind of
looking forward to seeing those guys. Yeah,
that's going to be a neat opportunity to see some of the different trucks. Yeah,
it really is, and again, I obviously love the events that we get to do, and but obviously some of the folks like you just mentioned, as they work their way in the arena shows and as their careers develop, I may not get as many chances to see some of those guys. So you're exactly right. I'm really looking forward to it. And even seeing some guys I haven't seen in a while, like Pat Suma and some of these guys, it's always a blast to see these guys back in action. And they're always going to throw down. I mean, I love the way these guys can take a small arena and do the amazing things they can do in them. So I've always just been amazed. Yeah, the big shows in the big air, I know that's what gets a lot of people drawn to the sport. But you look at the talent of what these guys can do in a Thunder National setting, and it never ceases to amaze me.
Well, this is the second year in a row that the NFL playoff schedules kind of played havoc a little bit with some of the Monster Jam Stadium shows. And, I can only imagine what goes into there at the office, then all of a sudden having to, change routings and send people different places and here and there. What do you think are kind of some of the neat storylines that have come about because of that? Because there's a few faces coming into it that wouldn't be doing some of those stadium shows otherwise.
I think if I was sitting on a ticket to Birmingham and had been looking forward to that show, and then all of a sudden somebody tells me that Dennis Anderson will kick off the Gravedigger 30th anniversary tour in Birmingham, and
there's a great surprise.
Some of these others are being added. I'd be getting to Birmingham if I was anywhere close to the place. So what it's done, obviously. Is that it has taken some lineups that were already really strong. I was really impressed with the way the schedule makers have been putting together the lineups, and now it's just taken some of them. I mean, I've worked Birmingham, that Coliseum before. Those fans are just great down there, and they're going to be rewarded, I think, with the best lineup they've ever seen. I think that's going to carry through to several. I know there are a couple of big additions to Tulsa, like you mentioned, and I think Medusa's coming in there now and some others. So it's going to take a lot of these events that are traditional first weekend in January events and have really good lineups anyway, and really just elevate them. And that's going to be exciting for everybody in places like Des Moines and Manchester and everybody that's on the schedule for this first weekend.
Well, yeah, great surprise for all those fans in those markets. One of the things I kind of wanted to start off tonight to talk to you a little bit about, of course, for all the fans out there, you go to TheMonsterBlog.com and you can follow along with Scott's power rankings each week throughout the first quarter. And you've put out the ones here for the start of the year, following up on the big Minneapolis event. And something I think is pretty interesting that I really think you've got spot on, Ryan Anderson in the number one spot. I really think at the World Finals last year, just with the encore, he showed that he's almost an odds-on favorite to win freestyle this year, and it should be one heck of a season from the young guy.
Well, it's really interesting. The power rankings that came out last week were heavily dominated by what happened in Minneapolis because they're in the fourth quarter of the year. Really, there was just Minneapolis, Albuquerque. Barcelona. There were only a few shows that impacted those power rankings, and our panel, when I got this idea going, the only thing I ever said was, you folks who are on the panel, you evaluate the results any way you see fit. I'm not going to tell you to do it, but I do ask that you look week to week. It just because if you believe a certain driver is the best, but if he wasn't the best last weekend, then you need to bring him down a few notches or her down a few notches, and I think our panel's done that. So that's what you saw with Ryan getting the number one spot for the first time in the poll that came out last week, and even Morgan Kane going in the top 10. I mean, he came out of nowhere, but my goodness, when the 16 trucks he beat in Minneapolis, I mean that made a statement. Interesting, you mentioned that. Gives me a chance to get a plug in tomorrow. My new column will come out at MonsterJam.com, and it's the first time. Of course, we've always done the power rankings for a few years. It was an idea I had to try and kind of do a poll like they do in college basketball, and just something hopefully some fans would get a kick out of looking at and arguing and debating, and that's what you do those kind of things for. And so we'll do for the first time tomorrow we'll release our preseason poll. So it's not based on any results. It's what our panel decided to vote on, who they think is going to have the best year is the idea. And why I mentioned that, and again, it'll be out tomorrow, so it'll actually get published tomorrow. Ryan does reflect quite highly in the poll once it comes out. But what's interesting, and I made a note of this in the column that goes along with it tomorrow, is that the rankings are one thing, but the panelists also, as they were sending me their votes, sent me little notes on who they were already making early predictions for the World Championship. And I thought it interesting that the most votes, if you will, even though we weren't voting, they were just giving opinions, the most opinions on who would win the World Freestyle Championship this year were Ryan Anderson had more mentions than anybody else. And in racing, Lindsey Wink got more mentions than anybody else. Now, they're not necessarily going to be number one in this first poll, but it just shows you what people think of the young talent. And not that, Lindsey's been around a while now, but it's a year a lot of people think that we may really see some new guys really busting through, not just making a name, but actually getting to the top and grabbing some of the big prizes. And you're right. I think if you survey people everywhere, I think we'll go to Las Vegas unless something strange happens over this first quarter. And I think you're going to see a lot of the fans who really follow the sport are going to be picking Ryan Anderson to win that freestyle title.
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up Lindsey Wink's name on the racing side because he had a great season in 2011, but in a way it almost seems like it went under the radar a little bit, if only because he had all stadium shows. So even winning a few of those over the course of the first quarter, unless you're just kind of winning, over 50% of them, you don't get noticed as much. But when you look back through 2011, he had 8 stadium racing wins over the course of the whole year, some of the summer shows and that. And that's just an incredible number of how spot on the setup seemed to be with the Lucas Oil Crusader team in 2011. So I really think that your panel has that pretty spot on with him being a favorite for racing.
Well, you make a really good point. And another thing about Lindsey, that, the way this all works, and you're exactly right, and it's the same way in any sport. There are certain teams or guys who go around kind of flying under the radar, having really good years, but something else steals the thunder. I mean, the NFL for the last couple of months, nobody's heard anything but Tim Tebow, even though, and the Packers being undefeated, and then, there's teams like there's Drew Brees all of a sudden, setting records that nobody expected, but nobody was really paying attention because of the other stories. And I think if you remember back to last winter, we really got dominated with the Dennis Anderson winning streak. And so wherever Lindsey may be, it was, if I remember right, and again, my age, the memory jumbles up a little bit, but if I remember right, Lindsey just absolutely dominated one of our toughest tests, which is the 5 stadium shows we do in Tacoma. And if I remember right, he just won a bunch up there, but it happened to be, mixed in with either like an Orlando or a Tampa where Dennis was carrying the headlines. And so your point's absolutely valid, and I think what really carried it through is that Lindsey just continued, and you mentioned the 8 wins, and that's with just the normal things. I mean, he went to Philadelphia, and the truck just fell apart when it showed up, or you may have been talking about another chance on a track that he would have been really tough to beat on, a big fast course that they had there in Philadelphia. So that team's really good. I know Lindsey's excited. Mike Christensen's taken over as his crew chief for the next year, and those guys seem to have clicked an instant bond, and I think that's going to be that anytime the Lucas Oil Crusader shows up and you're in the other starting lane, man, you better tighten those belts up because he's coming.
Something I'm noticing here, looking at the power rankings here, Dennis Anderson last year, just a phenomenal racing win streak. The man's arguably at the top of his game right now going into the 30th anniversary. But above him, you've got both Anderson boys, Lindsey Wink, as you guys were talking about, Morgan Kane breaking into the top 10. We've got a lot of young guys really breaking into the sport right now.
Yeah, and again, Dennis didn't run anything in the fourth quarter, so I think it's a tribute to him and what he did earlier in the year that he was still top 10 at all in a rankings that are based on results. He'll be obviously looking strong in the preseason poll we release tomorrow. But back to your point on the young guns, I don't know that I've ever seen quite the mix where you do have, you know, the Dennises and the Toms and the Jimmy Kohlers, you know, kind of still holding on to their piece of the turf. Yet, man, this blast of new talent. You mentioned a couple of guys there earlier. There's even more coming. And you know, and then I look at guys like Todd LeDuc, who has already got a stadium victory under his belt, and now, you know, my understanding is that there's not that there were many restraints on him in the first place, but I mean he's being pushed by Brian Deegan to run that thing into the ground, and he's got the talent to do it. And you know, there's just so much new talent coming in, and yeah, just to hold on to your piece now is going to be a tough thing for some of these veterans to do. And I think then the other thing that makes it the wild card is that Ryan Anderson and Adam Anderson are just special. They're just they lived it, they grew up with it, they clearly, you know, nothing's been handed to them. You can't do the things they do if they were living off their daddy's name, but they're smart enough to have taken advantage of everything in the trail their dad blazed and to learn. And, you know, you get down to their shops, and I had the pleasure of hanging out there a little bit and working on some projects and seeing those guys just build their own mud trucks and work. And they've been doing this their whole life and innovating. Adam runs different shocks than everybody else because he works on his own stuff and likes it certain ways. And to watch what these guys do, I mean, we've seen some special talent come in here in the last few years. And again, I think that's why it was so great to see Morgan Kane bust through because, again, here's another young guy, but he's not named Anderson, and it just goes to show everybody the talent that's coming, and I think it makes the veterans better. I think a guy like Tom Mentz has to look at that and say, man, I got to ratchet it back up if I want to get that 10th championship.
The Anderson boys, they really are the real deal. You make a lot of very valid points about them. Monster Jam really has a lot of newcomers, both rookies and teams just breaking into Monster Jam right now. Morgan Kane, he's still fairly new. We've got LeDuc, still a young, fresh driver. We've got some new names coming into Monster Jam, new truck combinations. We've also got the Crush Station. We've got J.R. McNeil, Brazen Kane, and heavy hitter Derek Anson, the guy out of Louisville, my hometown, all breaking into Monster Jam. Any one person that you really expect big things from this year?
Here's one I'm going to point out to you, and sometimes circumstances and how you lay things out matter. And now I'm thinking about Barry Musawar, and I hadn't messed his last. I got to work with his last name because I'm seeing a lot more. But Barry really developed very quickly, and really I got to see him really do some fantastic runs in Europe. But one thing for Barry is that with the truck changes and the way the lineups have changed, now he goes into a situation, you know, with the Spider-Man truck that he's the man there. Because anytime you're in El Toro Loco, there's several great El Toro Locos out there, but I got to tell you, and nobody's wrestling Mark McDonald out of the top spot on that team. I mean, that guy is bad fast. You know, he runs the wheels off the truck but takes care of his equipment. Well, now Barry's got his own opportunity here to be the man. And if he continues to develop like I've seen him, you know, right off the bat in his career, he may be one that could really take a few steps forward this year. That wouldn't surprise me at all. So he's one that certainly comes to mind as a newcomer. And I've heard a lot of good things about Nicole Johnson. I haven't seen her, you know, in an event yet, but I've heard a lot of people think a lot of her talent as well. So, yeah, they just keep coming.
Well, you know, just gives us a chance for a little plug, too. Barry will be on the show with us on Monday, February 13th, and we'll be talking to him about how his season's gone. We'll take this opportunity to go to a quick break right now. But before we do, I want to thank one of the great folks that's helping present Monster Truck Radio in 2012, and that's the fine folks with E3 Spark Plugs. Developed by researchers from leading engineering universities, E3's patented edge-to-edge electrode design delivers maximum performance with increased efficiency. E3 Spark Plugs features new diamond fire technology resulting in more power and performance, improved fuel economy, reduced emissions, and longer engine life. For more information, visit them online at e3sparkplugs.com. We'll be back after this break. You're listening to Scott Douglas on Monster Truck Radio. Monster Truck Radio is back, and we are talking to the voice of Monster Jam on Speed TV, Scott Douglas. Scott, I think one of the big stories for 2012 on the Monster Jam Tour has got to be new faces and new places with some big-time combinations coming out here. Lots of announcements in the last couple of weeks, whether it's Barry and Spider-Man, like you mentioned, Dan Evans taking over the Hot Wheels ride, Damon Bradshaw moving into the new Monster Energy truck, Alex Blackwell with Wolverine, and Chad Fortune with Captain America. I think those are some of the biggest ones. What do you expect to see from some of these big sponsor, big name combinations, and who of these guys do you think is really going to break through in 2012?
Well, I think there's a lot of interesting situations there. Obviously, Damon in the Monster Energy combination just makes sense, and Damon's been at that upper level. I mean, he literally put himself in a position to win like 3 world championships in a row. I mean, if he won in 2009, the last 2 years he's been second and third. So, I mean, here's one of the best in the game with a high-profile new operation, and I think that'll breed some excitement. Although I know he always loved running the Air Force truck. That team should move in real well. Alex Blackwell has run well in everything he's ever driven, but I can sense an excitement there because there's, from a lot of our long-term fans, the history of the Wolverine, the fact that truck won a world championship and then went away, and it coming back. But I think you know what you're going to get with Alex, and I think you know what you're going to get with Damon and some of these. What I'm getting to here is the one I'm going to keep my eye on is Dan Evans in Hot Wheels. And, Dan's always driven hard, but, you got to remember, Dan and Lori Evans have driven up and down the road for 20 years and their own equipment, out of their own back pocket, and done a great job and put on tremendous shows and been world finals competitors. But now they take a step forward to where they're in a, well-funded team that's expected, where he's just told, you go out there and run the thing and we'll worry about, paying the bills and getting it put back together. Dan Evans is one talented driver, and his opportunity this year and the way he represents sponsors, I think that Dan in the Hot Wheels matchup may be one that really explodes out of the scene to where some people maybe hadn't expected. He may pull some surprises that people hadn't seen before, just because maybe on a certain night back in the Destroyer days, it's like, I can only push that engine so much. I got to make it to the next show with it. All those things go out the window now. I mean, it's Katie bar the door, and Dan and Lori plan to rip that thing up. So that's one I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Well, another one that I think that's interesting that I actually forgot to mention a second ago is Cam McQueen moving into the new Canada-themed Northern Nightmare, and I think that's pretty cool, especially with the branding that Feld's doing now, calling it the Maple Leaf Monster Jam Tour, and I think the Canadian fans out there are really going to get a kick out of having their driver from their nationality coming up there with that truck.
You're absolutely right, and the thing is they've earned it. I mean, so many of those shows that we do in Canada have just been tremendous in terms of the fan support and the way our friends north of the border have always turned out. And now they've got their own truck driven by a native Canadian. The whole timing with Nitro Circus going away just works perfect for Cam. And I think you can make the case that Cam maybe has come truly out of nowhere to make himself a household name in our sport in just a couple of years because, again, there's nothing he won't try and nothing he won't do. And, he is an amazing talent, perfect fit to be in the Northern Nightmare. I find it interesting because the way the schedule works that the new Canadian truck will debut in Birmingham, Alabama. But,
Alabama, cool. Right.
Yeah, well, Cam can enjoy his 1 week of a little good southern sunshine because he's going back up north for the next couple of months.
Well, it's speaking of going up north, it's great to have Vancouver back on the schedule after a couple years away. That's got to be a real neat show, I think, to have back and having another of the big stadium shows up there north of the border.
Yeah, and those fans in British Columbia in the winter, they're legendary. I've never had the opportunity and the pleasure working that show. I did Edmonton a couple of years ago, but the stories from our the loyalty and the support and how rabid those fans are. And I can imagine getting that show back. They'll be even more off the hooks. Yeah, that should be a party all weekend.
Well, we've talked about some of the big new, Feld combinations with the new names and new faces, but going back to, like you were talking about Dan and Lori going up and down the road all these years, some of these independent guys that come in week to week and try to take on the rest of the competition. Jim Kohler repeating with the second World Finals Freestyle Championship last year. Guys like Jimmy Cretin, Jeremy Slifko, Steve Sims. Which of these independent guys do you think is really just going to kick it on up to that next level and be the top independent driver in Monster Jam this year?
Well, you got to have such respect for those guys. And I did an interview recently for a column I did with Dan Evans, and we got talking about Kohler and just the look of true respect in Dan's eyes for what Jimmy's been able to do and to now field 4 teams, the way those guys run those trucks. I mean, they're just amazing. They're absolutely just amazing. But, I mean, when you talk about the group that you just mentioned, I think certainly – the whole team scream effort's amazing, but what Jimmy Cretin does on a week-to-week basis. I mean, when that guy lines up, everybody knows that's one of the guys to beat. And we go to Las Vegas, everybody knows he's one of the favorites. That guy just brings it every time. He builds tremendous horsepower. His trucks are phenomenal, and obviously he's a great driver. And I think we're all thrilled to know that he and Dawn are back as a team, and Dawn will be back out this year, and then they'll have Darren Mingus back with them with their second team, and Ben Winslow, who is a guy I like a lot and continues to develop. So that's a pretty impressive 4-team combination. A 4 truck seems to be the magic number these days because now you got Steve Sims expanding, and it was interesting with Morgan Kane winning in the Monster Magic truck that was going to be his last trip in it because now Morgan gets the second Stone Crusher truck and I think pretty much heads out west with it while Steve does a lot of the Florida shows and a lot of the shows that we'll see. You got to be impressed with what Steve Sims has done, to be a guy who just came in and got wanted to be involved in the sport and got in it and decided right off the bat that listen, my business is fine. I'm making a living here. Every nickel we can earn from this monster truck operation goes right back into the operation. We're going to build the best. We're going to buy the best. And then his decision to hire Morgan Kane, I think, is going to pay big dividends for him as well. And also, if Morgan decides at some point to move on, I think what he's done with Morgan is opened up his operation as one that a lot of drivers will aspire to join. And so he's going to have an even bigger selection as more seats open up in his operation. I'm very impressed with what Steve Sims has done with that whole team out of Virginia Beach.
Well, there definitely are some high-powered independent teams in the Monster Jam series. We are going to go ahead and get this next break out of the way. With Amerigas, you get more than just a propane supplier. You get a propane expert and partner. Since 1959, their mission continues to provide you with the most reliable, safest, and responsive propane service in the nation. Over 1.3 million customers just like you use Amerigas propane services in all 50 states. That has made Amerigas the largest marketer of propane, and they use the size of your organization to your advantage, ever retaining on our focus on friendliness and personal attention found only in the corner store. Amerigas is America's propane company. Be watching for Obsession-Obsessed Monster Trucks on the Monster Jam Tour, and find out more info at Amerigas.com. We'll be back right after this quick commercial break, and you'll hear more from Scott Douglas on Monster Truck Radio.
Welcome back to Monster Truck Radio. We're kicking off 2012 with the one and only Mr. Scott Douglas, the voice of Monster Jam. Now, Scott, we were kind of talking a little bit earlier about your schedule for the new year and this first quarter. There are a lot of great lineups out there this year, and I'm sure it's easiest to know which shows you're visiting. Which one are you looking forward to the most?
Well, let me do one thing real quick, and I'll answer that question. As you went to your break there, we were talking about some of these other teams, and I would be remiss if I didn't get one more group in there I wanted to mention, and that's David Smith and Darren Basil, and then the operation they run out of Texas. Because you talk about true class acts and guys who show up with sweet-looking equipment and are just wonderful with the fans. And I want to make sure I mention those guys as well because they're just tremendous assets to our sport. And frankly, since I mentioned Texas, what the one I guess I've got to say that I'm really looking forward to on my schedule, frankly, because I haven't had the opportunity to do the building yet, is Arlington. I'm going to get to go down to Cowboy Stadium, and everybody just raves about that. And the lineup, as you just mentioned, with so many of these first quarter lineups, is off the charts. But it's one of the few Tom Dennis shows in the first quarter. So, both those guys will be there. So I've got to say I'm really focused on Arlington. But, when you get to spend most of your winter in Florida with a group of fans that are just, I can't describe the Florida fans. When you talk about going in back-to-back, Tampa, Orlando, Tampa, Miami, all within pretty much, Miami's a little further down the road, but all within that driving distance of each other, and then come back to Jacksonville, and you continue to see 60,000, 65,000, 70,000 people in the stands, and so many of them, you're walking around the pit party, hey, yeah, here, I want you to sign this picture that I took of you here 2 weeks ago in Tampa. The loyalty of the fans down there has just made Florida a special place, and the fact that I get to do all those shows is a true blessing to me. But if I got to pick one other than Vegas, obviously, getting the chance to do Cowboy Stadium is something I'm really looking forward to.
The building will be impressive to behold, if nothing else.
Man, I'm scared to see myself on that big video board is the problem there. That may be more Scott Douglas than we need in the building there, yeah.
The 60-foot Scott Douglas.
Be sure to trim those noses,
scary.
Scott.
Scary.
You mentioned the World Finals there. Always an exciting event. Qualifying for the World Finals is going to be even more exciting this year. We've got a lot of guys stepping up, as we've been talking throughout the program. Who do you expect to really surprise us by qualifying, or are there going to be any surprises, and who are your favorites for the World Finals?
Wow. Wow, that one. I'm glad I don't have to walk in that the room where they try to evaluate what everybody's done. And I know, last year, I remember coming down and those last spots with Chris and Jeremy. There were a bunch of people in the game there, and I think they made the right decisions. But it's tough. And you look at some, again. You take a look at a guy like Dan Evans now in the Hot Wheels truck. Dan hadn't been in the World Finals for 4 or 5 years now, and he's made no bones about the fact that that's a major motivation, for his team is to make enough noise to get that Hot Wheels truck in there. And obviously, with a heavy hitter sponsor and all that they're going to do everything they can to put that truck in there. And I would think that's one that hadn't been there for a few years that is going to be in the conversation, and we'll see how it goes. Again, we're talking about a new situation, even though Dan and Lori have been together for a long time, in terms of they know each other, and that helps when you got somebody trying to help work on your truck. Dan does a lot of his own stuff, so I would think that they would be one to keep an eye on. But see, it's so I just wonder who's going to break through with some of these lineups. You look at Todd LeDuc. When that Metal Militia truck rolls out, they've got a schedule where they're pretty much banging heads with big guns every week. And if Todd LeDuc starts busting out wins, well, what are you going to do? You got to get him in. You look at some of these guys. A guy we haven't mentioned here during this whole conversation, maybe as talented as any racer in the business, is Lee O'Donnell and Iron Man. And this young man's focused, and frankly, I think he's got a little chip on his shoulder. I think he thinks that maybe he's not quite getting the credit he thought he'd get real quick. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Lee come out there and surprise a few people a few times. He's done it before. So the depth of talent is just such that, you know, I know there's been a lot of talk about expanding it and tough to figure out how to do it, but boy, you almost wonder when that day is going to come, just because of the amount of talent that frankly deserves a shot in that event, in that for us was our pinnacle event.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, one thing I think, as long as you're mentioning folks that haven't come up in this conversation, in a way, it kind of speaks to the talent level that's raising in the series when we're almost 40 minutes into the discussion, and we haven't even talked about Tom Vince yet. As far as
Tom and Dennis are afterthoughts here for some reason, aren't they?
Pretty
well,
amazing.
No,
it's
exciting. The new talent, you know, that excites a lot of us, and it's fun to see the new guys come in, and I think all of us are just in awe of how good the new talent is. I mean, it's not just, you know, guys don't come up and just kind of hang around and, you know, lose in the first round and go put up a 12 in freestyle and go home anymore. I mean, these new guys come out, and, you know, when you got a new guy, it's a Ryan Anderson and it's a Morgan Kane and it's a Todd LeDuc. But, yeah, but make no mistake about it, and I got this especially kind of talking a little bit that I have with Tom and with Dennis and some of these things that he and I have discussed. You know, what all this new talent's doing is really pushing these guys as well. I mean, they can't sit on any laurels. I mean, you know, they know, and you know, Dennis's 9-race win streak, I mean, he just shrugged his shoulders. I'm not sure how this is happening. This is not something that's going to happen in this day and age. You know, they got that click and that great run going, but it's just those guys have to push so much harder because of what's coming into the sport.
You know, we touched on it a little bit earlier, and I know this was kind of one of the things that Chris touched on too, is talking about some of the favorites in each of the categories, racing and freestyle. We started the conversation with, you know, Lindsey Wink racing, Ryan Anderson freestyle. Who are some of your thoughts as to the names that are really going to be the ones to beat in those categories for 2012?
Well, yeah, and again, if you're, you know, week to week, I think we're going to see a lot more. What am I looking for here? I don't want to say upsets, because there's, you know, certain guys winning anymore. You know, it's not necessarily an upset, even if we haven't seen them win for a little bit. But I mean, as the season goes on, you know, I think developing that consistency, getting into a lot of final rounds, final fours, and picking up some wins is going to be key for a lot of these guys, you know, to try and get the momentum and get out to the World Finals. But, you know, I don't think that you'd go wrong if you were looking and saying, okay, you know, Dennis is going to win his share of races, Tom's going to win his share of races, so is Lindsey Wink, so is Adam Anderson, so is Mark. You know, Mark McDonald, for as fast as he's been, hasn't won a lot of big trophies in a lot of big stadiums. It wouldn't surprise me if that combination, he's got one of the best crew chiefs in the business, his team is tight. That wouldn't surprise me if Mark, you know, picked up a few big trophies where in the past he's been, you know, been in a lot of semifinals and maybe not necessarily winning the championship round. So that'd be a guy I'd certainly keep an eye on. But, you know, when we get out to Las Vegas and the differences of that track, you know, that's Tom's baby. I mean, he's won 31 of 37 rounds that he's ever run on that racetrack. That's just an amazing, it's almost 90% of his races. It's just incredible. He's always the man. But I've watched Lindsey Wink work that track and the way he's practiced, and he made it to the Final Four again this year. And certainly I can see why a lot of the folks who voted our power rankings told me that their early pick in racing out there would be Lindsey Wink. You know, and again, I don't think anybody better overlook, you know, Dennis Anderson and the way he and his team are jazzed about the 30th anniversary tour and what they want to do with it. They don't want it just to be a big dog and pony show and a hype and a lot of great souvenirs and cool displays and all the things that are going to go with it. And the new bodies they're excited about, you know, and the green one week and the purple the next week, and all that's great. But when it's time to strap the helmet on, Dennis, at a time when most people you would think would be retiring, is as good as it gets. And it wouldn't surprise me. Remember, this is an even number year. All Dennis's racing I know I love my trends. All Dennis's racing championships have come in even number years. And 2012, last time I looked, is an even number year. So I would certainly, we'll see how the season goes on when I start getting my odds ready. But I can't see Dennis being anything short of 1, 2, or 3 when you start looking at the favorites going out there in the racing. Freestyle becomes so wide open. So you kind of got to get the play. I think that the chatter that and as we've already discussed it is that Ryan Anderson and Ryan's even motivated because he knows that he's got one more year to beat his brother's record. And he gets, these guys get motivated by these things. If he can win the world championship this year, he'll top Adam as the youngest world champion ever by a matter of months. So that's something that motivates, and I think Ryan certainly. But again, we've seen on that track, because it is so unique and so different, so many drivers have, and Jim Kohler is probably the classic example. He goes from a world championship to, breaking in 30 seconds, and that in 2004. I mean, I don't think he lasted 20 seconds. Charlie Pauken put up one of the greatest runs of all time, and then last year, the different things happened. He wasn't able to duplicate that. It is so hard to do it again. For those who want to argue that if Ryan was in the competition, he'd have won it last year, well, now you're saying he's got to do that again. So that's something to keep in mind. A guy I would keep my eye on in the thought process, in all honesty, there's a couple that come to mind. One would be Adam Anderson. He has had such a bad run of luck in Las Vegas since he won his title. You got to figure it's going to turn back around for him at some point. So is this the year? And then there's two other guys I've mentioned because they, over the last few years, have been right there. And that one is Damon Bradshaw. I mean, he brings it every year, and so I see no reason he wouldn't do it again. But the other is George Belhan. George has gotten awfully close to never be in the conversation. And, he's second, third, fourth in that thing. What does it take to finally line the stars up right and have a bunch of people with mohawks standing up cheering for while George is holding up a trophy? Who knows? I certainly would have to keep him in the conversation.
All right, Scott. Well, I'll tell you what. We're going to go ahead and jump in and get this last break out of the way. You're listening to Monster Truck Radio, kicking off the 2012 season with the voice of Monster Jam on Speed TV, Scott Douglas. We'll be right back after this quick break.
welcome back to Monster Truck Radio. Scott Douglas, the voice of Monster Jam, on the line. Time's simply flying by. In our last segment here, want to talk about the 30th anniversary for Gravedigger. Obviously a big event, and they're making a point to make it a big event, and I'm sure Dennis wants to make it a big year for the entire team Gravedigger.
Well, he does, and I think you just hit on it, and I'm glad you put it that way with Team Gravedigger, because I think the first thing, and Dennis would be the first to say this, the Gravedigger 30th Tour is not just about Dennis. Yeah, Dennis was the one who created it, but he's big on, Gravedigger's a team. It's a worldwide team, the multiple trucks, and so everywhere Gravedigger goes will be a part of the 30th Tour. Obviously, Dennis's focus will have even more bells and whistles and him being the creator, but the Gravedigger 30th Tour is going to be special everywhere it goes. I do know, and this is one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing, that there's a whole new, and this is just for the pit parties, a whole new Gravedigger experience with, huge semis that are going to come in, and they're going to be, they're each going to, and I haven't seen it yet. I've just seen some of the concepts, but the past, the present, and the future of Gravedigger. I think for Gravedigger fans, this is going to be a real special year for them. And I think that ratchets it up for Dennis and CVH and Randy and Pablo and all the guys. I don't want to start singling anybody out, because again, they don't want this to be just a show and like a celebration that just honors them while they go out and get their tails kicked on the track. They're looking to get out and make a whole lot of noise and make it a real Gravedigger celebration, which is funny because that's all Tom Mentz needs is more motivation and the chance to spoil that. He and Neil and Craig have already gotten together to see how many times they can try and be the fly in the ointment. And the funniest thing that I think that in an interview that I did last year was there when we were in Baltimore. That was such an amazing event, and of course it was the bringing of the first time we brought that they had in the actual competition, Son of a Digger, the legend, and Gravedigger all there, and all three Andersons, and Lindsay won the racing, and Tom won the freestyle. And during the interview I had with Tom, he's never had much nice to say about Lindsay Wink, because he and Lindsay have battled each other, and he wanted to personally thank Lindsay for being the one to help him spoil the Andersons party. So there's a lot of motivation on all sides. But again, back to the original question, the Gravedigger 30th anniversary is going to be really special. I know it's going to be special for collectors. So many fans come up to me with their amazing Hot Wheels collections, and a lot of Gravedigger fans have a lot of special collections augmented with pictures and different memorabilia. Well, again, there's going to be a whole lot of amazing stuff this year that fans, if they want, can get their hands on. And I think it's just going to be special, and it's fitting. I mean, look at what sport has had somebody be able to be at the top of the game and bring more fans in and make more history year after year, and now it's 30 years and they're still doing it, still getting bigger. I mean, it's just amazing, and this 30th celebration, I think, is going to be a fitting tribute.
Well, it is very exciting to see the 30th anniversary for Gravedigger and for Dennis, and to see Feld really pumping up, really making it a big deal. I know fans everywhere had a lot of fun with the Bigfoot 30th anniversary a few years back when they did the retro body and all that. But as long as we're talking about history, it kind of brings me to the point of this new project going on out there, and that's the International Monster Truck Museum and Hall of Fame project out in Auburn, Indiana, where the guys out there working with Carl Casper and a lot of these big classic car guys, Dean Cruz, to put together and take a spot of that great museum that's got World War II history and classic cars and movie cars, and giving them a whole wing for the first monster truck museum, and all kinds of great stuff in there, from Mike Welch and, all these different names putting stuff on display, the first inductees, some of the originators of the sport. Well, now we're on to year 2 of that, and I just got to ask you, Scott, I'm sure you've heard a little bit about this, but how cool would it be if it worked out to where Dennis was actually inducted into this Monster Truck Hall of Fame in his 30th anniversary celebration year?
Well, I think and again, you're right. I really don't know much about it. I can't comment a whole lot, but all I can really say is that there are no accolades that are undeserving when it comes to Dennis Anderson, and anything you talk about that's going to pay more tribute to him, especially during this year, I think is going to be something that's really, really special. And it's just there are not enough great things that can be done or can be said, about him and about that whole team, but specifically about Dennis. I mean, there'll still be monster trucks, but I swear, a lot of us are making great careers and having great fun, and Dennis is the top reason why we're all able to do that, and there's just no doubt in my mind. And any tribute he gets, and he's deserving. If anybody's going to, any kind of a, like you say, Museum Hall of Fame, anything that comes along as years go on, or is there right now, Dennis Anderson is truly deserving of being one of the main originators going in. You mentioned some really cool names there, and a lot of them got this thing started. But certainly Dennis has been a guy who's carried the ball for 30 years and carried the water, and sometimes it was tough to do, but he's made it happen, and he continues to make it happen.
Well, as long as we're on the subject, I mean, talking a few years down the road, I really think personally that, there definitely is a big aspect for guys like you, Army Armstrong, that have been around bringing monster trucks to the general public all these years. And you yourself have been in a face. Fans tune in to see monster trucks on television going way back to, the TNT days and all the great monster trucks that have happened over the years. And to see you yourself still on top of the game, bringing monster trucks to the mass through Monster Jam on Speed, that your name is going to be one of the ones that's definitely going to be under heavy consideration as the years go by for that Hall of Fame. And I've just got to ask you, being such a sports fan, as we've talked previously on the show about your interest in a lot of different sports, what would it mean to you personally, from the media perspective, to get inducted into a Hall of Fame for monster trucks?
Well, that's interesting as that goes on, and I think it would obviously be very humbling for anybody to have that type of an honor. I know, you mentioned Army, and I know he was inducted into the Kentucky Motorsports Hall of Fame here a couple of years ago, and I was just absolutely thrilled. Obviously Army's the innovator, for all of us who do this. He's the man. He's the guy who blazed the trail, and it was awesome to see that, and I think that those of us who do this have always, at least hopefully, if you're going to be good at it, have hopefully tried to be in a way a liaison between the fans and the drivers to try and understand what motivates the drivers and what their story is, and then to be able to relate it back to the fans. So the stars are always those guys on the track, but I think anybody who does what we do, would kind of be giving you a little false humility if they said that it isn't quite an honor. When they gave me a nice award this year in Las Vegas with all the drivers there, and it was a real special moment there at the World Finals banquet, and that's not why we do it, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it wasn't awfully one of the great feelings that you'll ever have.
Well, as long as we got that chance, I'd just take a quick moment for a shameless plug on that. Fans that are interested in that museum concept that haven't had a chance to hear more about it, it's monstermuseum.org, and the second annual Hall of Fame induction ceremony in Auburn, Indiana is going to be November the 3rd, 2012, a Saturday night, and it's going to be a great time. Army Armstrong returning to MC once again, and hopefully Scott will come out and join us this year.
You got the best, so that says something right there. Mr. Army in the house, man. That's where you need to be. Absolutely.
But to kind of skip back up to now, and gosh, I'd love to have you on sometime when it's not first quarter and we could just walk back through all the great history, and maybe we can make that happen later this year. But
that'd be great. I always love talking to you guys. I really enjoy your show and appreciate you doing it. This is the kind of thing that I just love. The more that's out there, the more people are talking. The more it's great for what we do and brings more people in. Because I've always been a believer. If we can just get people. In years ago, when we were in a lot of these places with a lot of empty seats, all we got to do is get them through the door. When they see what these guys do, when they come to a pit party and get to spend time, on the track and with the drivers that you don't get at a football game, you don't even get at a NASCAR race. That's the special thing that once people get to see it, it becomes infectious.
Well, we love having you on the show, Scott, and it's just been a great opportunity here tonight. So with little time left, I mean, it's flown by as it always does. I just want to kind of ask you, what you might be able to give us some insight on that. What are some of the shows that are actually going to be part of the Speed TV schedule that you're going to be filming out there this first quarter?
Well, yeah, it's really interesting, because we started earlier, which obviously I'm thrilled. We used to have kind of the calendar thing, and we'd wait, and this year the folks at Film Entertainment and Speed got together and said, we're not, Vegas has aired. All right, let's start the new season, and we had Philadelphia ready to go. So we're ahead of the game, if it will. Minneapolis will be hitting the air pretty soon. Here's the other thing that I hope fans will enjoy. Because we have the great blessing of Speed doing so many, reruns and, the show's on so much, which is great for us in that regard. But we also want to separate, in many ways, 2012 and make this season stand just a little bit different. So we'll still have, a full complement of the major racing and freestyle shows. Will be, Atlanta will be on the air, in Orlando and Arlington and a lot of those shows. But the other thing we're doing is putting together several special 1-hour episodes of things that we haven't done before. For instance, one coming up that you're going to see real soon is just an hour that is, in essence, put together from the World Finals banquet that happens the night after the World Finals in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
Where we took all the winners of the major awards, showed the runs that won the award, and then let people see their acceptance speeches, something that unless they really dug deep onto the World Finals DVD or looked around on YouTube that they wouldn't see. And so I think that's kind of cool. So we're going to do a few specials like that and try to get even more kind of behind the scenes, a lot more of the crew chief side of it and what's happening with our technicians and those kind of things. So I'm real excited about where we're going with the season this year, that's for sure.
Well, it sounds very exciting with the behind the scenes and giving fans some more of the aspect of just all that goes into doing these events. We're down to it here, so one last question. Big announcement, Monster Jam going to East Rutherford, New Jersey this summer for a big stadium show up in the Northeast. Touch on that real quick and kind of promo that up. Yeah. That's going to be a big deal up in New York City.
You think that'll make next year's Speed schedule? I'm guessing that it will. Yeah, anybody who saw what happened in Baltimore, you got a taste. Because obviously with Feld Entertainment and the way they love to do things, and when we're able to come up with a major new venue as we did with M&T Bank Stadium, I mean, they just everything. It was an amazing lineup. Everything they could put into it was there. And so I'm sitting here thinking that's even going to be grander. They're going to expand it even more for our chance to, go to Metro New York. Yeah, I know we've done Long Island Coliseum and had great shows there for years, but here's our chance for the first time to take a stadium show to the Big Apple and show the New Yorkers how we do it Monster Jam style. And I'm pretty sure that I get the microphone in my hand for that one. And I got to tell you, we mentioned earlier the highlight shows. I was talking first quarter. I'm not sure there's going to be anything more exciting than to walk in to the home of the Giants and the Jets and thousands of Monster Jam fans and open that place up and we'll have our Advanced Auto Parts grinder team there and all the big guns blazing and it's I'm sure Gravedigger, Max D, the lineup's going to be off the charts. It is, and it's going to be one of those special moments, and I look forward to being a part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Scott, we're down to it. I mean, thank you so much for being with us again here tonight. Fans, be sure to log online, MonsterJam.com. Check out Scott's weekly column, The Insider, on there. Lots of great stuff, the power rankings. And, hey, this weekend, it's a big kickoff, so get on there and get yourself some tickets to see some Monster Jam this weekend.
Absolutely. And I saw your impressive lineup looking there online for what you guys got coming up. So just I'm going to be tuning in next week, and just be careful that you guys don't get Ryan Anderson's head too big. We got to keep that kid a little bit grounded because he's pretty amazing.
Yes, he is, and we look forward to talking to him. Well, once again, thank you so much for stopping by, Scott. We will be in touch with you to try to get you on later this year to recap the season, talk about some history. But for now, we'll let you get to it, and I'm sure you're getting ready to hit the road for 2012.
Absolutely, guys. Look forward to seeing you somewhere down the road. And, again, keep rocking on with your show. Great job. I enjoy being a part of it when I can.
Thank you so much, Scott. You have a great night. Well,
Thanks,
fans, Monster Truck Radio kicking off the year. It couldn't get any bigger than with Scott Douglas, the voice of Monster Jam on Speed TV. Those of you watching the clock know we're running a little long, but because we're no longer with the folks over at Castle Rock Radio, we have the opportunity to do that. So what we're actually going to do this evening, because this is such a big deal with the first weekend coming up, don't leave us, because we're going to give you a little bit of bonus content coming up here. We got lots of good stuff coming up to talk about as we get ready to kick off the season. So we're going to give you a little bonus time. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on Monster Truck Radio. Monster Truck Radio, presented by E3 Spark Plugs and Amerigas for 2012. Hey, we're into bonus time here, fans, as we're going to get ready to talk about some of the great things coming up. Huge season getting ready to start. We could not be more excited. Monster Blog started off back in 2005, and now we're all the way here in 2012. And so many great things going on, so many great things happening. First of all, again, a big thanks to the folks with E3 Spark Plugs and Amerigas for all their support and for jumping on board to help support the radio show for the new season. Speaking of which, I want to take a minute. We announced this week on the Monster Blog and on MonsterTruckRadio.com the new schedule for this season for first quarter. We have got some absolutely amazing shows coming up, starting here with this week, which was the Monster Jam season preview with Scott Douglas. We'll go into next week where we're going to actually recap the whole week number one, and I would expect a little bonus time during that show too. But we'll also be talking to Ryan Anderson, huge name. We can't thank him enough for coming on the show and hearing, letting you fans hear from him his impressions of his first weekend and the upcoming season. But we're also going to try to take the same approach we do with Monster Blog, and that's to cover the monster truck industry as a whole. So we're going to have a separate night, a separate show each week to feature some of the different tours going on out there. The Monster Nation / Toughest Monster Truck Tour Night, the Monster X Tour Night, Monster Nationals Night, and even the Monster Truck Winter Nationals Night. And then lots of good Monster Jam information, focusing on stuff like Road to the World Finals updates, the big preview show the week before the World Finals where we have the former world champs, Jimmy Cretin and Jim Kohler, come on. And then the recap show the Monday after the World Finals where we'll talk to Pablo Huffaker and John Zimmer, who we expect to both be part of that lineup. Chris, you know, we have, I think, one of the luckiest jobs in monster truck coverage that we get the chance to talk to all these big names and bring the fans some great insight through these interviews each and every week on Monster Truck Radio.
Absolutely. A lot of exciting stuff that we get to touch on that you really don't get to tackle when you're, say, interacting with a driver during a pit party. There's a lot of momentary interaction, and we really get to sit down and talk to these guys, and it's simply great. Even from a fan's perspective, I'm eating this up, and I think our first quarter lineup's really going to be very interesting. I'm looking through the lineup, and it's hard to pick one single show that I'm looking forward to because, frankly, I'm looking forward to all of them.
Exactly. Well, that's what's coming up on Monster Truck Radio, but we got some other good things to talk about here before we jump off the air for the evening. And the thing I'm most excited about, be watching the site in the next couple of days, TheMonsterBlog.com, because big announcement coming out with TMB TV. First thing to announce in that regards is E3 Sparkplugs is renewing their deal to present TMB TV in 2012. Cannot thank Steve Joyner and the folks over at E3 enough for their support of what we do here with the TMB TV series, and the original series going into its big 5th season, Action Tracks and MT Unlimited, their 3rd season. Some pretty exciting stuff coming up on that schedule, and it all kicks off Wednesday, January 11th, the same time, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, as we will feature the Monster X Tour from Daytona Beach, Florida, and from there it kicks off, and it just goes crazy all the way through the end of April, and that's what we've got on the schedule now, and I'm sure it's just going to keep on going from there. Chris, as far as Action Tracks goes, going into your 3rd season, got a new logo, a new look, some great new stuff going on there. What are some of the shows you think you're looking forward to most on the Action Tracks schedule for 2012?
Really, Action Tracks is lining up to have a spectacular first quarter. We're planning on starting off the season in Lubbock, Texas with the Monster X Tour. Should be a very neat show. We'll see essentially the debut of Kyle Doyle behind the wheel in Bigfoot. He's had some occasional appearances before, but he'll really be stepping behind the wheel this year. And the one and only Bill Payne and his trucks will be there, so you can count on some phenomenal action. But, we're also going to bring you some great action from Youngstown, Ohio, the toughest monster truck tour, it also running under the Monster Nation name, a great developing series there. It's going to be an exciting quarter for Action Tracks, and I think it's going to carry momentum all the way through the rest of the season. It's really proving to be a chaotic, perhaps even entire 2012.
It really will be, and it's exciting going into the 5th season with the original series. We'll have some big shows, but as long as we're on the topic of the Monster X Tour, they had a really big announcement today that we just put up this evening, getting the press release in. They are actually going to do a points championship for 2012 on that tour, and it's going to be unique in that it's going to start off this first weekend of the year in Daytona Beach in Stockton, California, and it's going to go through the whole first quarter with the arena shows, and then this is where it kind of gets unique. The points will keep on accumulating all through the summer at the outdoor venues, the fairgrounds and the speedways. And when it gets down to towards the end, they're going to pick the drivers who kind of accumulated the most points, invite them all out to Portland, Oregon for the big championship event there in Portland at the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And it's kind of an exciting deal. It's something new, and it'll be something very exciting to follow along with, because I can't remember when there's been a championship in recent years that's started indoors, gone through the entire year outdoors, back to indoors, and that's really going to take a well-rounded driver to pick up the win in that, I think. Absolutely.
It's really exciting to see this sort of commitment to crowning a champion. Like you were saying, there's a lot of commitment to running this through the entire year, and rather than just being, say, a champion of one division of the promotion company, you're going to be the all-around champion. So, I guess you could use the analogy that typically we're kind of like crowning the super speedway champion or the short track champion, where this time we're crowning the entire series champion. I think that's a great development for the sport.
Well, I think so, too, and it'll be interesting to watch it. And the nice thing is we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with the Monster X Tour in 2012, so you're going to be seeing all that points battle on TMB TV across the 3 series. I know Colby's got a lot of great plans with MT Unlimited, so again, be watching for that schedule to come out here in the next couple of days for the first few months of the year. The real exciting thing about that is we always do the Wednesday nights. We have got so much content coming your way on TMB TV in 2012 that during the month of February, we're actually going to be doing Wednesday and Thursday nights with new episodes coming out each night. So it's just going to be a jam-packed schedule of coverage of all the independent series. I mean, there'll be a lot of Monster X Tour, but you're also going to see some Toughest Monster Truck Tour, some Monster Nationals, and some Monster Truck Winter Nationals. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And again, we can't thank the folks with E3 Spark Plugs enough for their support of that. Well, fans, this is the big weekend coming up. First weekend of the year. Colby Marshall's heading off to Stockton. I'm going off to Daytona. You're going to see all kinds of great stuff on TheMonsterBlog.com as we cover opening weekend 2012 for you. And each week you want to follow along on the site because the results tracker's back for 2012, so every week you'll see results from every single show in the entire industry. Also coming back for 2012 will be the Monster Jam Road to the World Final standings. Again, it's kind of like Scott Douglas's Power Rankings, only we base it directly off those results that come out each week from the events, and it kind of lets you see how all the drivers stack up against each other and who's kind of most deserving of some of those World Finals nods that get handed out. Chris, any last thoughts here for all the fans as we get ready to start off a huge season in 2012?
You know, really sit down, buckle up, and enjoy the ride because it's going to be outstanding in 2012.
Well, I think that says it all. Again, a huge thanks to Scott Douglas for being with us tonight. We're incredibly privileged to have him on the show. He's got so much command of the knowledge of monster trucks and the Monster Jam season, and who better to give us the preview of the Monster Jam season than the man himself, Scott Douglas. Next week, it just keeps getting, it stays big, I'll say that, because Ryan Anderson going to be on the show with us. Lots of great questions we've been thinking of for him. Adam doing the show last year, and hopefully we'll one of these days get Dennis on the show. That'd be great. But right now, Ryan coming up next week, and a huge schedule of other guests. If you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check it out on MonsterTruckRadio.com. Like us on Facebook to stay up to date with all the updates from the radio show. And be sure to follow us on iTunes for all of you out there with iPads, iPhones, all that good stuff, because you can actually download the show each and every week through iTunes, which is a very exciting development for the show and helps expand our reach to more and more people. Well, fans, that's going to do it. A big thanks once again to Scott Douglas, also to Chris Parrish for co-hosting this evening. This is Ross Bonar for Monster Truck Radio. We have had a great time with you kicking off 2012. Fans, be safe out there on the road for the first weekend, and we will be seeing you as you come by and check out the news, coverage, and results on all the goings-on in monster trucks at TheMonsterBlog.com, where we know monster trucks.